Thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to be joined by Tim, the co-founder and CEO of Loop Club. Tim and I have a long history of working together, and I'm honored that he's with us today. So Tim, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Rachel. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So we originally were working at Mute 6 together for a few years, and we were always working on deals and servicing the same sort of clients and working together to grow that organization. What motivated you to start your own company?
Well, really, it was just demand. As the pandemic kind of raged, I think we just noticed that there was real demand for e-commerce expertise in the market. I had left Mute 6 and just to try other things. I'd gone in-house for a period of time. And I liked being in-house, but it was much slower. And I was so used to having my hands on the levers and being able to really rapidly drive growth, and clients wanted it. So it was just a product of our situation. Clients just wanted what we did, and we knew that we were able to do it. So it kind of just became an inevitability. There was just a few of us working, always working all the time, and then we were sharing resources, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Sure. So at that point, it was like August when you started the agency, and it was the middle of the pandemic pretty much. How did the pandemic affect your clients and the strategies that you executed for them?
I mean, it went either way. So some clients saw a massive bump. Other clients saw a decline or had problems, but obviously the e-commerce space in general grew like 10 years worth of growth in that year. What I think was challenging for clients was that they weren't able to keep up with the growth, so they weren't able to service the customers that they were getting, or they had an expectation that that spike would continue forever, and that they were able to get some very cheap conversions and cheap new customers at the start of the pandemic, but weren't necessarily nurturing them or building relationships outside of panic buying or impulse buying. And it was challenging to reorient clients to the idea that this wasn't going to last forever, and that these particular purchasing patterns weren't going to stick. But we still needed to do all the same things that we normally do. We still needed to message properly, still needed to speak to the value of the product over time and convince people of the specialness. Otherwise, people were buying once and they're not coming back to brands quite a bit.
For sure. So Loop has had huge success in only 10 months of business or so. So what's your secret to growing so quickly?
I think transparency with clients, is really what people want. I think most clients have worked with one or more agencies, and most people have had a bad experience. And that's not to say anything about agencies, but it's pretty easy to start an agency. It's pretty easy to start a service-based company, and it's difficult to scale effectively. So I think that a lot of people have been burned by the agency ecosystem. So for that reason, if you have proven expertise and you can kind of really talk about it, and you can simply and clearly tell clients what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, people are really attracted to that. And there's a lot of BS in the space. There's just a lot of gurus. There's a lot of just fake numbers. And I think the more clearly and articulately you can explain what you'll do to your clients, the more they'll believe you, and then they'll just have you do it for them. This marketing is not complicated. It's relatively simple, but the challenge is knowing what to do at the right time. So the answers aren't really about using this kind of complicated, mysterious strategy. It's just being able to think through oh yeah, this should work for you right now, or this should work for you. And so when you get to the right answer or a useful answer, it resonates quite quickly.
For sure. Not using jargon and confusing them, just being very straightforward. Hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z for you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The jargon is just the death of any agency. But yeah, it just doesn't work. We're going to do this. And if you don't know how to do it, you just tell them that you don't know how to do it. People are looking for someone that they trust to go with them on a difficult journey. And that's what people are paying for.
Right. I think that's something that I noticed you always really had with clients at our previous workplace. because you had such a strong client retention rate. And that says a lot about that relationship and the trust that you're building with the brands that you work with.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And obviously, like, you do want to build these relationships for the long term, and the relationship is the business. And ultimately, especially now at this point where I'm building teams, really what someone is paying us for is the trust that you will continue to solve the problems as they come up in the relationship, and that you'll find the right people, you'll hire the right people,
Right.
put them in the right place, and that you'll give them the responsibility and the ownership to do their jobs well. And that only comes from relationships.
Sure. Very good points. So Loop always starts its process with a deep dive and even offers complimentary audits. What are the most common mistakes you see brands making before they bring you on board?
There's a ton of stuff. There's a lot of stuff. I would say one of the most common things is there's a lot of surprisingly basic stuff that you see in accounts. People not having the right exclusion, so they don't know what their acquisition is or their remarketing is. People just not really understanding what their metrics are, not segmenting your email list, stuff that is, so you're sending emails to some people every day and you're burning out your list. That kind of just like simple things that no one has had the time to think of. Most of the time, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the client. Like, it is really difficult to manage a lot of channels at once. Mm-hmm. The way to learn to do these jobs is from making it up and having experience. So no one has a complete set of knowledge of what to do. So there's always things on the table. So see a lot of times those kinds of simple mistakes, but then at a higher level, the things that we always do that always move the needle are pretty typically the same. It's like, where's your user generated content? Where are your star ratings? Where is the social proof? How easy is it for you to communicate with the brand? How simple is the messaging? How clear is it what the value is of the product? And then how well are you demonstrating that value to people? And often that's the levers that you use to manipulate that are different, but usually it's just like, this isn't written clearly, or why are you using this picture? There's no product in this picture, or I don't understand. And people want to be taken care of, and they want their life to be made easier by your product. So if you're complicating the experience or making it difficult for them, they'll just fall off. They'll just click out of a tab.
For sure. As like simple and straightforward as you can make the messaging is so important. And then also like you said, user-generated content. So they're real people that are using this product and loving it. That social proof makes people much more comfortable to make a purchase with the brand for the first time.
Absolutely.
What are your favorite like tools or strategies that you think brands are often afraid to try before you give them guidance?
So afraid to try means like either there's some risk involved, so they might have to spend some money, or they have to do something they don't know how to do or they haven't done it before. I would say influencer whitelisting or just leveraging influencer content better would be a huge one. So again, something we do on every single brand. So this is running ads through an account that isn't your brand account on Facebook. So you get access to an influencer's profile and you run ads through that influencer. Most of the time, people don't do it because it's annoying. Frankly, it's annoying. It's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of like negotiating. You have to deal both with influencers and with Facebook backend. Like it's a painful process, but the reward is there. And we find this a lot, that sometimes these processes that have a little bit of upfront pain are actually some of the most rewarding because there's a natural moat around it, because it's not that easy for every other brand to replicate that strategy. So you get a little bit more time to do it. So it's a little more effective than it would be otherwise.
That's a really interesting one. Is it quite expensive to get the influencer to agree to this sort of thing, or are brands writing it into the influencer initiative or contract?
We just write it in. So we work with a service. We have a partner agency that sources influencers for us, and we got it into our agreement with them that they will always get whitelisting approval. And it is a win-win. I always present it as a win-win. Like, their profiles grow from doing it. You're putting ads behind their profiles, and influencers want that as well. So if you present it in the right way and you make it clear, everything's about making things clear. If you make it clear what everyone's going to get from it, then that it generally works.
That's really smart. You're definitely a marketer. I like it a lot. So Loop Club takes on a limited number of clients each month. What is your criteria for selecting brands you'll assist?
It's a good question. So, I mean, first of all, it is agency, like working, especially at a small agency, it's a lot like a marriage with a client. You're going through a lot of different scenarios together. Some of them will be stressful. You'll go through stressful situations with that client. So I'm first and foremost looking for people who we like to work with, who we enjoy working with. That seems to be the biggest indicator of success, more than any other KPI in the account, to a really, really ridiculous extent, because typically you have to test quite a few things over a period of time before you find scale, before you find really significant success. And the only way you're going to get through that period of time is if you like working together. And so the clients that we genuinely enjoy and like we think are smart and who are making good decisions and who listen, they see significantly more success than clients who we don't have that same kind of relationship with. Other than that, I would say pretty typical. I mean, we don't want to work with like undifferentiated products or drop shippers or stuff like that is not going to work for a long time. It is ideal if you have a little bit of a brand already. We do work with a couple of very early stage e-commerce brands, but it's a little bit of a different thing at that stage. So typically we're looking for some traction. We're looking for the ability to invest in advertising, and we're just looking for people who we like to work with. And then after that, there's questions about the viability of the business, like higher price point products are better. You really need good margins to make D2C work. Really need 70 to 80% gross margins to make D2C work. So that's important. Like, I will ask about that now because we've had a couple of situations where people just don't have the margins to reinvest in advertising. Stuff like that matters, but really more than anything is the relationship.
That's really good advice, actually. I wasn't even thinking of it that way. You need that higher margin, but it absolutely makes sense because the cost of acquisition continues to rise. So you need to have enough of a buffer to make sure you're still able to make money and grow a business.
Absolutely. It's so much more difficult without that margin in there that it's just almost not worth trying. And you see it all the time. Like you see a worse quality product with better margins and good marketing will win. It will.
It's sad, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the real winner is a great product with great margins and good marketing. Like that's the long-term winner. But the reason why these brands can scale quickly is because they know their numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good point. So you've also worked with political campaigns. Because you work exclusively with Shopify brands, how did this campaign use a platform usually designed for selling products? And how did your strategy differ when it came to fundraising versus e-commerce?
It's a good question. So we actually didn't use Shopify for these campaigns, but we don't really, it's kind of another part of the house, but we use a platform called ActBlue, which is a political fundraising platform. And it's also one of the best shopping carts, weirdly, in America. So because it has 25 to 30% conversion rate, which is incredible. So as a marketer, you look at this channel and you're like, wow, absolutely amazing. And it is a little bit different, but what we discovered was that the kind of base level strategy is pretty similar. I mean, if you're raising donations from someone, it's basically like selling a course. So you can hit a 1 ROAS and you're breaking even at a 1. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot more room to play. So if you're an e-commerce marketer and you're used to having to pull every trick in the book and getting really complicated, it's playing on easy mode. Like it's surprisingly easy, but it is also the same. Everyone fails in the same way. So political campaigns, they think that things are more complicated than they are. And they have an idea of the message that they want to put out, which is different from the way that normal people communicate. In the same way that if you're really close to a brand, you have an idea about what your brand is, and it's different from how people would experience that brand. So our job is exactly the same thing. It's like taking the 100 sentences that they've written and and distilling it down to like 2 things that people can understand and just making it simple, making the path to purchase simple. It's really exactly the same in a weird way.
Many merchants struggle with email marketing and segmentation. What's your number one piece of advice for leveraging customer data when it comes to email marketing?
Where I think the industry is going is in gathering survey data up front. So multi-step pop-ups that ask for different pieces of information, or quizzes, for example, whether it's a BuzzFeed style quiz or like help us choose what product you'd be interested in the quiz, or a pop-up on site that asks you like, what are you shopping for today? Are you shopping for yourself or for a friend? Gathering that data and storing it with that Klaviyo profile, and then pushing people into segmented flows based on that information. I think we'll see that start to roll out to everyone over the next year or so, and it's already starting. There's really 2 challenges. One is getting the customer data, and then the other is actually effectively leveraging it. And I think the 2 of them come together, right? Like you need enough data that these segments are meaningful, but you also need to think about why you're collecting the data and what you're going to do with it. Because otherwise you're just gathering all these properties and you're not actually using them, and you just end up with like a big data bank of nothing. So I would think about things you would ask a customer that would meaningfully change the communication that you have with them, as opposed to just like, do you like red or blue better? Like when you're looking to purchase is a good question. Are you purchasing for yourself or for a friend is a good question. Like, what of these categories are you most interested in? Those kinds of questions, and people will give you that information.
I think you raise a really good point there as well. And it's something that I talk about a lot when it comes to selecting customer or product attributes in Okendo, because you can sync all of those into your Klaviyo customer data profile and build out segments. So let's be really strategic about the information that we're collecting here, like what's going to provide a really good segmentation strategy for the brand.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. iOS 15 is here, along with new data and privacy terms. So what does this mean for SMS marketing and customer engagement for your clients?
Yeah, I mean, it's just all going to get a little harder. Everything's going to be a little bit harder. But my challenge to my team and my challenge to myself has been like, what would change about the way that you did this job if you didn't have metrics, if you didn't have levels, if you couldn't see the results of what you were doing? And like, realistically, it's probably not that much, right? Because the things that we know work because of like the consumer psychology. We know from our experience that they work. And like, I'm still going to make UGC ads, even if I can't see that ad is performing better than the other ad, because I just know that it works, because I understand the psychology of like why these ads work. I can see the engagement, I can see the purchases, and I'm thinking about it. I think in the same way, it's like, what do you know about copywriting? What do you know about your product? What do you know about customers? How can you use that information to drive revenue? And like ultimately revenue is the goal, right? And it's going to get a lot harder for marketers who are really attached to the data and who aren't thinking about what the data is telling them. But I think that it's just going to be just more challenging to coast. It's going to be more challenging to coast. You need to really understand your value proposition and what people want from it, and really think about how to give value in every communication. And that's always been true, but it's going to become exceptionally true. Super, super true.
All right. So are we not going to be able to see which of those ad variants is converting at the highest rate, or like what are we losing here?
Well, I mean, this is more like, so iOS 15 is going to take open rate for a lot of for iOS devices. We'll still be able to see some variants. We've already lost a lot of conversion data.
Okay.
I mean, I would not be surprised if Facebook found a workaround, and I think this is another part of the reason for this Facebook Shop Pay thing. But in general, like, there'll be all these workarounds. There'll be little things that happen, but like the broader overarching trend is towards less data made visible to us as marketers. And whether that's because of privacy stuff or whether it's because of AI black box algorithms, the end result is still the same. We have less information to work with when measuring and optimizing. So like, and that's going to continue. So I've been saying to the team, like, imagine if Facebook was just a place where you uploaded your ad and a place where you put your credit card in. Like, what would you do differently? Because it might not be that extreme, but it will be like that. It's going to be a little more like that. And over the course of time, it's going to become more and more and more like that.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for your time. This has been really fun and super valuable. So thank you for joining us, and take care.
Thanks, Rachel.